So anyway, this ring, this setting, it's going to be like this. And then the opal is going to sit inside of this setting, like so. And that's going to be the ring eventually. Slowly learning. My first ring I ever made. It's not perfect. It's not even finished yet. First bezel I've ever made. Not perfect. Not finished yet. I still need to clean up that solder. It's not very good. But it's my first time ever doing it. It's still really rough. I still need to sand it and polish it. And that's the opal that's going in it. Pretty fun stuff. Pardon the messiness of my workstation. I've been busy at work, and whenever I have free time, I work on this stuff. But I started making this bezel, and I bought this pair of snips just for cutting this type of stuff. I got 2 sets of them, but they're freaking cheap as hell. Don't buy cheap jewelry tools. So every time I go to try and snip this thing, this is different. I cut this with something else. But these guys, bruh, you can't snip it because as soon as you start squeezing, the handles freaking bend and you can't get any freaking pressure. So I tried chewing it out and I started ruining my bezels. So I'm just going to wait till I can buy a proper pair of snips. Don't buy cheap tools on Amazon for really any project at all. It's a waste of freaking time. And don't buy a micro torch. This torch is garbage. I've used it maybe a total of 15 whole minutes, maybe 20. And the flame is already down to like maybe half an inch long with a full tank. It just won't do shit. I'm super pissed about this torch. I will never buy another one of these pieces of garbage again. I'm just gonna have to order a Durston because this is bullshit. I've spent the last like 3 days trying to make a ring with a bezel and an oval in it, but I don't have a good torch. I either have this shitty little torch that doesn't burn hot enough, or I have this MAP gas torch that burns way too hot. So I was able to make the ring. It's not finished yet because I'm not going to finish it until I get the whole thing done. I started making a bezel out of bezel wire, but like I said, this one wasn't hot enough to solder it, and that one melted the bezel wire into liquid. So I started using ring band metal to make a bezel, and that's pretty frustrating. So I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to sweat solder this and heat it up from the outside. And I ended up getting the solder heated up really well. But I'm using cheap-ass Chinese snips from Amazon that you should never, ever, ever, ever buy, period, for any reason. Anything that doesn't have a brand name on it, yeah, it's garbage. So I was able to cut my bezel out. Now I just have to fix it because when I was chewing on it with these cheap Chinese snips that bend when I squeeze, I bent the bezel out of shape, so I gotta fix it. But I was able to cut it out of this sheet of silver using a freaking pair of cheap ass hair cutting scissors that are broken, but they worked better than the tool that I bought purposely for this. Freaking ridiculous. I got a little bit ahead of myself. I was just putting the stone down in to see how much of the bezel I need to cut off, and just to see what it would look like because it's the first ring I ever did. I went ahead and started bending the metal over, thinking, oh, I could just pry it right back and pop the stone out, and I broke my freaking opal. I'm glad I used one of the lesser quality opals that I have for this learning adventure. I would have been really bummed if that was like $100 or more stone. It's like a $5 stone. Anyways, the adventure continues in this messy world of learning the silversmithing trade. I got a little bit ahead of myself. I was just putting the stone down in to see how much of the bezel I need to cut off, and just to see what it would look like because it's the first ring I ever did. I went ahead and started bending the metal over, thinking, oh, I could just pry it right back and pop the stone out, and I broke my freaking opal. I'm glad I used one of the lesser quality opals that I have for this learning adventure. I would have been really bummed if that was like $100 or more stone. It's like a $5 stone. Anyways, the adventure continues in this messy world of learning the silversmithing trade. So anyway, I was able to salvage my bezel, and I cut a piece of boulder opal that I got from Mr. Opal on Instagram. He sent it as like a free gift with the parcel that I bought. That's one of the stones, and that's another one of the stones. It's kind of a bad angle to shoot that stone from. But anyways, it was a triangle shape about the size of my thumbnail. So I cut it down kind of hurriedly just to make it fit in this ring, because I've been working on it for so long. I just wanted to see it become a ring with a stone in it. So I'm going to have to go at that with the Nova bit and round those edges out a little bit and press it back into the setting and clean this setting up, straighten it out, sand it, polish it. And there's my first ring I've ever made in my life. Pretty stoked. The process has begun. Yep. Doing a bunch of extra filing work because I had a bunch of crappy tools and the torso was too hot. Ended up melting a bunch of silver. Had to come up with some improvisational ways to make a bezel that I then got too excited about and went to see how the stone looked with it set and bent the bezel edges in a little too much. Tried to pry it out and broke the stone. So I cut a new stone, put it in the ring, and now that there is a stone to hold this thin bezel solid, I can try and reshape it a little bit as I go around with the file to try and at least make it look like a decent ring, even though it's not, which doesn't really matter because this is my ring. But it is my first ring, and I always keep the first of everything I make, unless someone offers me a ridiculous sum of money for it, which I don't think that's going to happen with this. Getting there. Got it fairly shiny. Looking okay. Got it crimped as much as I could. I did not dome the stone as much as I should have, and I ended up cracking it, and it's already in there, and I'm not going to break another stone. Like I said, this is my personal ring, so this is my learning curve. This is to remind me when I'm smithing to never skip any steps and to always use good tools. And that's what I'm going to do from now on. Sometimes learning the hard way is the best, though, because then you really know and you never do that crap again. Anyways, now comes the time to sand this bugger. Well, there it is. The very first finished opal ring. Well, not all the way finished. I still need to do a final sanding and a polish. But that's as good as it's going to get as far as forming. There's a little spot right here where I wore the bezel too thin. Learned a lesson there as well. I'm learning all kinds of lessons with this project, and I'm super happy about it. But there it is. Bam! My very first silversmithing project. My first opal jewelry. Two birds, one stone. Chee-hoo! Not bad for the very first ring I've ever made. Looking forward to learning how to improve this craft in the future. Ew.